Muskoka continues to avoid new infections of COVID-19. Doug Ford hints at the start of phase 1 of the economic reopening plan. And how close are we to a vaccine? I'll have the details coming up. All that and more coming up right now. Welcome to Cogeco News for May the 12th. I'm James Bowler with what's happening in your community. Well, good news once again as Muskoka continues to avoid any new confirmed infections of COVID-19. This area has seen a dramatic decline compared to other parts of the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit. Meanwhile, while we seem to be peaking in Ontario, provincial officials want to make sure we don't see another dramatic increase in cases. That's why Doug Ford announced at Queen's Park today the plan to extend Ontario's emergency measures until June the 2nd.
This extension will also continue enforcing important public health measures. And while we've made significant progress, we still have a long way to go. But we also have many reasons to be hopeful. We're making steady progress.
And that progress is pointing towards what Ford calls stage 1 in the reopening, with more information coming soon.
We'll have more details on Thursday, and it will be stage 1 of 3 stages. So that's very important, that the people of Ontario have all followed the protocols, and we've hit stage 1 on Thursday. So we'll have more details as that rolls around.
Joining me now from his home office is Mayor Graydon Smith. Graydon, thanks very much once again. You've become a weekly staple on our show.
It's a pleasure to be here, whether it's once a week, once a month, or once a day.
Well, again, we do appreciate it. And, of course, the topic of conversation, once again, is, the cottagers and the coming long weekend. So recently you had a conversation with Premier Doug Ford regarding opening Muskoka up to cottagers, just allowing them to come up, check their property, not necessarily for the party aspect. And then there was a recent release from the mayors and from District Chair John Klink asking for a little more of a ease of tensions between locals and cottagers. Now, we're now coming into the long weekend, and I'm curious as to your thoughts of what we could expect to see this weekend, and obviously what you're hoping to see.
Well, 2 questions there, and I guess one answer would cover it, but I'll elaborate. First of all, what I want to see is empathy and respect for everybody that's in Muskoka, regardless of why they're here or how they got here. I think we are going to see more cottagers. It's traditionally a weekend where people come up to their residence, if they haven't been here already, to check it out and get things ready for the remainder of the season. This is like going through a door that's opening slowly. We're not trying to say that it's unbridled party time and just like any other May 2-4 weekend. Quite far from it. This is really about property owners or people with secondary homes in Muskoka being able to come up here and check on it with themselves or members of their immediate family. This isn't about tourism. This isn't about bringing friends up to the cottage. This isn't about having a party and the gang's all here, because if someone's here, we expect all those protocols that have been in place, such as physical distancing, and of course you can't have gatherings of more than people. That all still counts. So this is very different than past May 24th weekends, and I expect that we can have a good one if everybody does their part. So
I want to talk about the provincial parks reopening. Now, as of Friday, the more operational parks such as Killbear, Arrowhead here, and then Algonquin will be open once again. Is the timing a bit off on this because it does so heavily line up with the May long weekend, and it almost provides an opportunity for cottagers to come up and have some recreational outings, which again I feel like we're trying to avoid right now?
And I would agree that we are trying to avoid that because there's really no infrastructure to support people doing anything other than coming to their residence. Certainly it's going to attract people to the parks. I'm hoping that tends to lean more to locals, or again, maybe the odd cottager that feels they need to get out and stretch their legs and hasn't had that opportunity to do it, and not a mass influx of people that are looking for a fun way to spend the weekend. Certainly, the program available within the parks is pretty limited. The beaches are closed, and I think most of the facilities are closed. So if people do their research, I think they'll find that it appeals to a fairly narrow segment of people that are looking for a new place to go for a walk, and not a whole lot more.
Great. Just overall, I just want to again discuss the possibility that we're basically losing a summer here now. The Bracebridge Rotary Club recently announced that they were not going to be moving ahead with the with Canada Day celebrations, and it seems like a lot of the events that usually pull in business for local businesses may not be happening. Is that something that do you believe that's going to extend throughout the rest of the summer?
I think there's a good chance of it. It's hard to envision a time when any organizer of an event or municipalities themselves will be anxious to get a lot of people back together in one space and ultimately be responsible for making that decision, until things are very different than they are now. So I believe 2020 will be a very difficult year, whether it's now or whether it's well into the future. I think that, as you spoke of, the trickle-down effect of people coming to these events and spending money in our community may well be lost. And tourism operators right now, are certainly already suffering because they're closed, and not generating any current revenue, but they're also not getting reservations for the future, and the money that comes along with that, and the cash flow that comes along with that. So this is certainly a year where there will need to be a lot of support through hopefully numerous government programs that can get some of our businesses to the other side of this, whether that's provincial or federal, or the limited amount that we can do at the lower tier. But most of all, I think it's an opportunity for us to understand that we need to rally around local business because of this fundamental change. And a lot of people have done a great job in supporting local businesses prior to this. We need them to redouble those efforts and have people that might otherwise push that button to order from Amazon take a look for that local alternative, because we need to keep dollars in this area.
All right, Graydon Smith, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time. And obviously it is a good reminder that if you can shop local, please do. And we are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Yesterday we heard from Dr. Mark Cameron, a Canadian doctor working on research in the States, about comparisons between working during SARS and during COVID-19. Today, we hear about how soon we could be seeing a vaccine being developed and released to the general public, and how a mutation could affect that. So, Mark, let's talk about a vaccine. So, original projections around March were 18 months. Your own president, Donald Trump, has asked for a warp speed vaccine, which, I understand was about a year now. So tell me, what are the projections now? How soon could we see a vaccine hit the general public?
So warp speed vaccine development has actually occurred right now, although those are the first few phases. Because of our experience with SARS in 2003 and H1N1 swine flu 10 years ago, and also MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, another coronavirus from a number of years ago. The vaccine development phase hit the ground running. So warp speed was quite appropriate for the phase we're in right now. Right now, there are hundreds of vaccine candidates worldwide that will move to various stages of testing. In the US, there are 8 vaccines already in clinical trials. Now, that is the first phase of rolling out a vaccine, where they are giving the vaccine to small groups of healthy individuals. That's just phase 1. And what they're looking at in phase 1 is the safety of the vaccine in general, and whether an immune response to COVID-19 is adequately generated. The next phases, phase 2 and phase 3, is bringing the vaccine out to larger and larger groups of people as a clinical trial. Phase 3 is the largest, where thousands of individuals are vaccinated, including the people that will need the vaccine the most, i.e. with COVID-19, the elderly. And then looking at that stage further at safety, making sure there aren't any adverse events that occur in the vaccinees. And then the efficacy. Is this vaccine, or this particular vaccine, because there will probably be several candidates, effective at protecting the population when they're exposed? The second and third stages of that clinical trial process to get to a vaccine that can be selected and rolled out to the general public takes a long time. What I hope for is, if we're talking in a year now, that the vaccines that kind of rose to the top during the development as the safest and most effective are at that stage 3 clinical trial. And then what has to happen then is, if it's effective, if it's safe, it has to be manufactured and rolled out as a vaccine to the general population. Now, that is a relatively short amount of time over the next year, year and a half to actually do that. Everything would have to fall in place. The vaccine would have to be very effective in all of the people that are treated. What I'm hoping for, and I think it's a reasonable expectation, is that the SARS-CoV-2 or the COVID-19 vaccine is available for the 2021 autumn start of the cold and flu season. And I think that is a reasonable goal. But warp speed really is a term that right now is describing the science the world over to identify a number of different vaccine candidates that can be pushed forward in parallel, which is going to be a very costly process to pick and choose the most effective way of vaccinating people.
Mark, my last question for you is about mutations and reinfection. Now, there's been some discussion that, and some reports that this is not happening, it could be happening. I'm curious, what is the realism of a mutation happening? How long would that take? And how does that affect how does that play against the vaccine process?
Right, so every virus has a family tree. And the COVID-19 virus is no different. As it emerged from Southeast Asia and spread around the world, scientists have been sequencing it and watching for mutations. And they've identified small little changes as it has spread around the world. So the SARS-CoV-2 that you might find in Toronto or Cleveland here may be slightly different from the virus as it emerged in Wuhan, China, or affected Italy. Now, so far, the virus has been quite stable, and coronaviruses typically are, unlike influenza viruses, which change on us almost every year. And the mutations have been quite small. Now, I've seen studies that have shown that there has been a mutation or two that has made the virus a little more dominant, a little more strong in infected people. And I have seen studies where mutations have impacted the virus's ability to infect and survive. So there's a balancing act there. The good news is, so far, the coronavirus appears to be stable, and the mutations that have happened have not had an impact to the level where we would worry about the vaccines we are developing today not being effective when they do get developed and rolled out. So far, the SARS-CoV-2 virus has been stable, and that's a good thing for a good thing for vaccine development.
All right. Dr. Mark Cameron, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I hope you stay healthy and stay safe. And a big thanks once again to Dr. Cameron for joining me this week. We'll have him back on soon with some updates on the vaccine process. And if you missed part one, you can catch the entire interview on our website tomorrow, yourtv.tv. We are taking a quick break, but when we come back, more details on the challenges funeral homes in Muskoka are facing. Welcome back. One of the services being impacted during COVID-19 is funerals. And for local funeral directors, not being able to have that personal touch with grieving families has been difficult.
The difficulty has been that we're now in a position where we have to explain to people limitations on what they can do. Where prior to COVID, it was a joy for us to be able to tell families what they can do to celebrate the life of the ones that they've lost. So as it currently stands, the province has guided our industry to say that 10 people can attend at the funeral home. That means that 10 family members or 10 people that have been designated by a family can come in to pay their respects at any given time. So it gets to be a little more difficult. These restrictions are extended to the cemetery as well. And therein lies, from a funeral director standpoint, the difficult nature of having to tell somebody no, or you will have limitations. Where arrangements are required, we do have all the legal documentation that has to be filed before we can even move to have a service or have a burial or cremation, we've adopted DocuSign, which is just an online portal so that we can send the required documents to somebody to their home. So they're still getting the expert advice and the guidance through the whole process. It's just not in a face-to-face manner. And that for us is tough because we want to be able to see people, to have their reaction, to have them in the building to make choices on what urn would you like to place the ashes in, what casket would you like to choose. It's a lot more difficult to do that by way of a photograph than it is to actually be in our selection room to be able to choose by seeing and maybe even touching the fabric of the casket or holding the urn to see if it's the right choice.
We're back to the break, but when we come back, some disappointing news about Gravenhurst Opera House. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, COVID-19 has caused the cancellation of many events, and unfortunately, we have some bad news from Gravenhurst. And joining us to chat a bit more about that is Manager of Arts and Culture, KRISTA STOREY. KRISTA, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you very much.
And I am sorry to hear that we do have a bit of bad news coming from the Opera House for the summer. So if you can tell me a bit about what's happening with that, KRISTA.
Well, it has been 6 weeks, I would say, that we have been sitting on the edge of a cliff trying to determine what was happening next. And, just as the provincial timelines have been inching forward, and we've been inching forward as well. And, the Opera House has been closed to the public for those 6 weeks. And so we've had to, unfortunately, come to the very devastating decision to cancel our summer theater season this year. And for anyone who may not know, summer theater in Canada started right here in Muskoka, and the Opera House has been a part of that history for many, many years. So this would be 86 years this year, and so is very devastating for all of us at the Opera House, and of course all the artists and everyone else that has been involved. It's a huge employer in the summertime, and also an economic driver for our small community.
Well, KRISTA, I must say that anyone that knows you knows that you are very emotionally tied to this theater and to the shows that run there. And saying that, I know that this must have been the hardest decision in the world for you to be making. But because of that, obviously this was the right decision. So we do appreciate you doing that.
Thank you very much. And you promised not to make me cry.
I'm so sorry. We'll give you a break before you do. But thank you, KRISTA. Thank you for taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to next year's season. I will be the first one in line to grab a ticket for that season.
Thank you so much for all your support. We
Thank
really
you, KRISTA.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We hope to see everyone soon.
Thank you so much. We are going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Here's a recap of what made headlines today. Muskoka is continuing to avoid an increase in the infection rate under the health unit, despite other areas like Orillia and Barrie continuing to see more new confirmed infections. Doug Ford is set to announce an extension of the emergency declaration today, but also dropped hints that would see the start of phase 1 of the economy reopening plan later this week. And how soon would we see a vaccine hit the general public? According to one immunologist who dealt directly with SARS, likely not until late next fall at the earliest. You can get all the details online at yourtv.tv on that interview. That's Cogeco News. For more information on the program, head over to yourtv.tv or connect with us on social media by searching Your TV Muskoka, and remember to watch us live at 5 Monday to Thursday. From everyone here at Cogeco News, thanks for watching. Have a good night.